What if the most celebrated royal birth of the decade never actually happened the way the world was told? Imagine this, a global audience, millions glued to their screens, headlines blasting historic joy, and photographs carefully staged to signal continuity in a centuries-old monarchy. Yet beneath the polished smiles and official press statements, something didn't add up. A doctor, after 6 long years of silence, has now confessed that Meghan Markle was never officially admitted as a patient at Portland Hospital, the very place that supposedly witnessed the arrival of Archie Harrison. Shocking? It should be. Because if this is true, it isn't just about a private medical matter. It's about the integrity of the royal narrative itself. And if the story of Archie's birth was staged, what else has been a performance all along? Think about it. The British monarchy has always thrived on carefully crafted rituals, images, and public theater. Births, marriages, even deaths are wrapped in tradition and displayed like sacred ceremonies. We saw it with Princess Diana. We saw it with Kate Middleton. Every step documented, every moment scrutinized. And yet, when it came to Meghan Markle, the world was handed a version of events that was oddly incomplete. No public arrival at the hospital. No trusted eyewitness accounts. No official medical confirmations. Just a set of photos, a brief statement, and silence. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Doesn't it make you wonder, what was really happening behind those closed doors? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Here's the thing. The royal family has a long history of controlling narratives. In times of crisis, they lock down the message, control access, and choreograph every detail. But this time, cracks began to show. Journalists whispered about inconsistencies in the timeline. Observers noted that Meghan's pregnancy bump seemed to defy normal patterns. And now, with this doctor's admission, the doubts that simmered for years are boiling over. We've reached a turning point where speculation collides with testimony, where rumor meets revelation. And it begs the question, why was the world misled? Let's rewind. Back in May 2019, the world waited for the announcement of Archie Harrison's birth. Cameras stood ready. Crowds lined the streets. Social media buzzed with excitement. The royal family had promised transparency, but then came the sudden shift. Instead of the traditional announcement outside the hospital doors, as we saw with William and Kate, we got a carefully worded press release. Instead of photos on the hospital steps, we got staged images later within palace walls. Why break such a beloved tradition? Why hide a moment that was supposed to symbolize continuity and joy? These questions festered then, and they sting even more now. And think about how unusual it was for Portland Hospital to be named at all. For decades, it's been the hospital of choice for celebrities, not royals. Diana chose St. Mary's. Kate chose St. Mary's. That hospital has history, precedent, and a built-in stage for the nation. Portland, by contrast, offered more privacy, less visibility, more control. Was that choice coincidence or calculated? And if Meghan was never even admitted there, why name the hospital in the first place? Was it a smokescreen, a diversion to give the illusion of normalcy? Some will argue, does it really matter where or how Meghan gave birth? And on the surface, perhaps it doesn't. But dig deeper. We're not just talking about a private couple here. We're talking about members of an institution that is supposed to embody honesty, transparency, and duty. The birth of a royal child isn't just personal, it's constitutional. It ties into the line of succession. It binds the monarchy to its people. And if deception played a role here, the implications are staggering. Could the legitimacy of Archie's place in the royal family be questioned? Could this revelation undermine trust in the monarchy itself? Now let's address the emotional angle. Millions of people celebrated Archie's birth as if it were their own family's joy. They sent gifts, letters, messages of congratulations. They watched the photographs of Harry and Meghan cradling their newborn. They believed in the story. To find out now that key details may have been fabricated feels like betrayal. It's not just about Meghan and Harry. It's about the relationship between the royals and the people who fund them, adore them, and defend them. Trust, once broken, is hard to repair. And this story rips at the fragile threads still holding the monarchy's credibility together. But here's the twist. This isn't the first time the royals have been accused of rewriting history. From concealed affairs to manipulated photographs, from hidden illnesses to staged appearances, The palace machine has always known how to curate the perfect royal story. But the Meghan saga feels different. It unfolded in the age of social media, where every image is dissected, every timeline compared, every inconsistency magnified. The palace couldn't control the conversation the way they used to. And now, 6 years later, with a doctor finally breaking ranks, the illusion may be collapsing in real time. Ask yourself this. Why would a doctor, bound by professional codes of confidentiality, risk their reputation by admitting Meghan was never officially admitted? Was it guilt? Was it pressure? Was it the realization that the truth was already seeping out, and it was better to confirm than to deny? Whatever the motive, the effect is explosive. Because this isn't speculation anymore, it's testimony. And it shines a harsh light on everything we thought we knew. Imagine being Prince Harry. On one hand, you're a father, desperate to protect your child and your wife. On the other hand, you're a royal, expected to honor tradition and tell the truth to the public. If Meghan never gave birth at Portland Hospital, then Harry was either complicit or misled himself. Which is worse, the idea that he knowingly played along with a staged birth? Or the idea that even he was kept in the dark by Meghan's team? Both scenarios are deeply troubling, and both beg the same question. What else has been hidden? Let's not forget Meghan herself. Throughout her public life, she has carefully controlled her image. From her Hollywood career to her royal role, she has mastered the art of performance. Was the birth narrative just another script, rehearsed and performed for global consumption? Did the pressures of royal life push her to extremes? Or was this always part of the plan? Her relationship with the press has been adversarial, and perhaps this was her ultimate way of keeping control. But control, once exposed, can quickly turn into chaos. The irony is breathtaking. Meghan once accused the British press of fabricating lies about her life. And yet, if this revelation holds true, the most significant lie may have come from her own side. Isn't that the ultimate contradiction? The self-proclaimed victim of false stories, allegedly orchestrating the biggest false story of them all? Now, here's where it gets even more unsettling. If Meghan was never admitted, then where did the birth happen? If at all? Was it at home? Was a surrogate involved? Or was the entire timeline a fabrication? Each possibility opens a Pandora's box of implications. A home birth could have been kept private without deception. Surrogacy, while controversial in royal circles, could have been admitted with dignity. But a staged story? That suggests something far darker. A deliberate attempt to deceive not just the press, but the people, the monarchy, and history itself. And think of the precedent this sets. If a royal birth can be staged, what other truths might have been manipulated? Were other royal stories similarly crafted to hide inconvenient facts? How far back does the theater go? These are the questions now gnawing at the edges of public trust, and they won't go away easily. This story matters not because of gossip, but because of principle. If monarchy is about continuity, then truth is its foundation. Remove truth, and the whole structure begins to wobble. A monarchy built on illusion cannot endure. And this revelation about Meghan and Archie is not just a scandal, it's a warning sign. Because what the doctor finally admitted doesn't just challenge one story, it challenges the very idea that the monarchy tells the truth. And once people start doubting that, the cracks can quickly widen into collapse. But the most haunting part? We're only at the beginning of this unraveling. Because the deeper we look into Meghan's birth story, the more contradictions we find. And the next layer of this saga reveals just how staged the royal fairy tale may have been. What if everything you thought you knew about the birth of Archie Harrison, the fairy tale arrival of Meghan and Harry's first child, was nothing more than a carefully choreographed illusion? Think back to those spring days in May 2019. The world was waiting, breathless. News outlets camped outside Portland Hospital. Social media was buzzing with speculation. Fans stood ready, Union Jacks in hand, desperate to celebrate the newest member of the royal family. And then, as if plucked from the pages of a glossy magazine, came the announcement. Meghan had safely delivered a baby boy. A new royal heir had been born. It was the perfect story, almost too perfect. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What if that moment, that fairy tale, was staged from start to finish? What if the smiling photographs, the tightly worded press releases, and the glowing headlines were not the signs of a real royal birth, but instead the performance of a lifetime? That's the question we must ask as we peel back the layers of this extraordinary saga. And it starts with the narrative the public was fed, the supposed birth at Portland Hospital. The story was elegant in its simplicity. Meghan was said to have gone into labor quietly, shielded from the cameras and the chaos. Harry, ever the dutiful husband, stood by her side. The staff at Portland Hospital, renowned for discretion, ensured privacy. And soon after, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor entered the world. Shortly afterward, the press was told that Meghan and baby were doing well. A brief photo call followed, showing Meghan in a pristine white dress, Harry at her side, their bundle of joy in arms. The world swooned. But when you look closer, contradictions begin to appear. Unlike with Princess Diana or Kate Middleton, there were no photographs of Meghan entering or leaving the hospital. No candid shots of cars whisking her through side doors. No parade of medical staff confirming the royal event. Instead, there was only silence, broken by carefully timed announcements. Even the timing of the birth seemed strange. Official sources claimed one set of hours, Harry himself spoke of another, and news outlets scrambled to reconcile the differences. Why were the details so murky? Why was this royal birth shrouded in secrecy when others had been moments of public celebration? Traditionally, royal births are treated as matters of national importance. When Prince George was born, cameras captured every step, from Kate's hospital arrival to the iconic appearance on the steps of St. Mary's. The same happened with Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. There was transparency, ritual, and above all, visibility. These weren't just personal moments. They were historical events. So why, when it came to Meghan and Harry, was the script flipped? Why was everything pushed behind closed doors, leaving only polished scraps for the public to consume? It's here that the fairy tale begins to crack. If Meghan truly gave birth at Portland Hospital, why is there no record of her being officially admitted? Why have hospital staff never corroborated the story? And most damningly, why has a doctor now admitted that Meghan was never their patient? For years, questions swirled in whispers and online forums, dismissed as speculation or conspiracy. But with this confession, those whispers have erupted into thunder. Still, let's not rush too far ahead. To understand the significance of this revelation, we have to retrace the narrative as it was sold. The palace insisted that privacy was Meghan's choice, that she wanted the birth to be a family affair, not a public spectacle. And for many, that explanation seemed reasonable. After all, Meghan had endured relentless media scrutiny, criticism, and invasion of privacy. Was it so shocking that she wanted to shield this moment from prying eyes? On the surface, no. But beneath that explanation lies a contradiction. If privacy was truly the goal, why name Portland Hospital at all? Why set the stage with a location that, as it turns out, may never have been part of the story? The answer, perhaps, lies in illusion. By naming a hospital, the palace could give the appearance of normalcy, tradition, and legitimacy. It created a breadcrumb trail for the public to follow without ever providing real evidence. A convenient distraction. But here's the question. Why would they need such a distraction unless the real circumstances of Archie's birth were something the world was never meant to know? Think of the imagery used. The first photos of Meghan post-birth were not on hospital steps, but within Windsor Castle. She appeared radiant, her white dress perfectly tailored, Harry beaming proudly beside her. The images screamed purity, rebirth, and continuity. Yet something about the timing felt off. Meghan looked unusually polished for someone supposedly 2 days postpartum. Her figure seemed almost too slender, too composed. Eyebrows raised. Some whispered about surrogacy. Others questioned whether the baby shown was even newborn at all. And instead of quelling these rumors, the palace's evasiveness only fueled them. This is where the role of performance becomes impossible to ignore. Meghan, with her Hollywood background, understood the power of image better than most royals. Every shot, every outfit, every line delivered to the press carried the weight of intention. Was Archie's birth story just another carefully directed scene, scripted to maintain the illusion of royal tradition while hiding a different reality? And if so, who else was in on the act? Harry's behavior offers clues. In interviews following Archie's arrival, he appeared nervous, almost rehearsed. His descriptions of the birth were vague, his timeline muddled. At one point, he seemed unsure of how many hours had passed between labor and delivery. Contrast that with William's confident recounting of Kate's births, and the difference is stark. Was Harry stumbling because he was overwhelmed, or because he was reciting a version of events that never truly happened? For the public, the contradictions were disorienting. They had been primed to expect a royal birth steeped in tradition, complete with hospital steps and cheering crowds. Instead, they were given silence, secrecy, and a staged photo call. And now, with the doctor's admission, the fairy tale crumbles entirely. It wasn't just unusual, it was false. But here's the most critical point: the narrative worked. For years, millions accepted the story without question. They celebrated Archie's birth, shared the official photos, and bought into the illusion. The deception, if indeed it was one, was so smooth, so carefully constructed, that it went largely unchallenged. That's the real power of performance. When a story is told with confidence, even the most glaring gaps can disappear. And yet, time has a way of unraveling lies. 6 years later, the silence has broken. The doctor's confession has brought everything into question. And now, we must look back at those smiling images, those official words, and ask ourselves, were we watching history or theater? Because the truth is clear. The royal fairy tale of Archie's birth was hiding a secret. A secret so explosive it could change everything we thought we knew about Meghan, Harry, and the monarchy itself. But that was only the beginning. Because the real cracks began to show not in the photographs or the announcements, but in the hospital itself. And that's where the story takes its first shocking turn. What do hospitals always have in common? Records, paper trails, a system so tight, so unforgiving, that even the smallest medical visit leaves behind an undeniable footprint. A routine checkup, an overnight stay, a birth, especially a birth, must be recorded, documented, filed. There are nurses' notes, intake forms, charts, and signatures. Hospitals run on accountability. And yet, when it comes to Portland Hospital and Meghan Markle's supposed delivery of Archie Harrison, those very records are missing. Missing. Let that sink in for a moment. The birth of a royal baby, a historical event, one that should be verifiable down to the minute, leaves behind no official trace. Isn't that suspicious? Isn't that the first sign that something isn't just off, but deliberately concealed? Consider the precedent. Princess Diana gave birth to both William and Harry at St. Mary's Hospital. Every detail of her admission was tracked, noted, and confirmed. The nation saw her enter, and the world saw her leave, holding her newborn sons in her arms. Kate Middleton followed the same path. George, Charlotte, and Louis, all born at St. Mary's. The press waited outside. The hospital staff prepared. And once again, every record confirmed the story. This is how royal births have been handled for decades: transparent, public, and indisputable. So why break the pattern with Meghan? Why Portland Hospital, a facility more often used by celebrities seeking discretion than by royals seeking continuity? The answer may lie in the very thing Portland is known for: secrecy. Unlike St. Mary's, Portland offered no public stage, no cheering crowd, no journalists lining the pavement. It was designed for privacy. And privacy, in this case, might have been the perfect cover. But privacy is not the same as invisibility. Even at Portland, every patient must be logged. Every admission requires paperwork. There is no such thing as a ghost birth. So when a doctor from the hospital revealed that Meghan was never officially admitted, it didn't just raise questions. It detonated a bombshell under the entire narrative. If Meghan wasn't admitted, then she wasn't a patient. And if she wasn't a patient, then the official birth story collapses in on itself. Think of the implications. The press was told Archie was born at Portland Hospital. The palace confirmed it. Journalists repeated it. The story was accepted globally. And yet, the very institution at the heart of it, the hospital itself, has no record of Meghan ever being there. Isn't that the ultimate contradiction? It gets worse. When Archie's birth certificate was finally released, eagle-eyed observers noticed something odd. Initially, Meghan's name was included as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Later, it was quietly altered, replacing her name with Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. The palace brushed it off as a clerical adjustment, but the timing and secrecy fueled suspicions. Why meddle with a birth certificate unless there was something to hide? Was the location itself part of the illusion? Hospitals like Portland are not strangers to discretion. They have served countless celebrities, Victoria Beckham, Liz Hurley, and even royals like Sarah Ferguson. But even those private births still left records. Doctors and nurses, sworn to confidentiality, handled the cases, yet the legitimacy of those births was never in doubt. Meghan's case, however, is unique. Not just secrecy, but And then there's the matter of the timing. The palace initially announced that Meghan had gone into labor, only for Harry to appear shortly afterward, beaming as he told reporters that the baby had already been born hours earlier. The narrative shifted in real time. It was clumsy, contradictory, and suspicious. If Meghan had truly been at Portland, why the confusion? Why the conflicting timelines? Isn't it strange that an institution famous for precision, for controlling the flow of information, stumbled so badly on a matter as important as a royal birth? This is where Portland Hospital's role becomes even murkier. Could the hospital itself have been used as a prop? A convenient name, invoked to give credibility to a story that never unfolded within its walls. The palace's press office names Portland, the media prints it, the public accepts it, and no one digs deeper. After all, who dares to question the official line when it comes to the royal family? But people did question it. Observers noticed the lack of hospital staff coming forward. Not a single nurse, not a single doctor, not even a porter claimed to have seen Meghan on the premises. Compare that with St. Mary's, where staff members always quietly confirmed the royal arrivals, where leaks and whispers inevitably slipped through. Portland, by contrast, was silent. Too silent. As if there was nothing to confirm, because nothing had happened. And here's the cruel irony. Portland Hospital has always marketed itself as the choice for the discreet and the elite. Its reputation rests on secrecy. Yet in this case, that very reputation may have been exploited to stage a deception. By naming Portland, the palace could count on the hospital's silence, knowing it would never release statements or challenge the narrative. Silence became complicity. But then came the doctor's confession. After 6 years, one insider finally broke ranks, admitting that Meghan was never officially admitted as a patient. In other words, there was no record of her being there to give birth. That revelation doesn't just poke holes in the story, it tears the entire fabric apart. And if Meghan wasn't at Portland, then where was she? Was she at home? Was there a surrogate? Was the baby even delivered in the UK at all? Each possibility is more explosive than the last, and each one suggests a level of deception that goes far beyond privacy. Think about it. If the palace truly wanted privacy, they could have said Meghan delivered at home. That explanation would have been believable, even sympathetic. Instead, they pointed to Portland Hospital, creating a story that was supposedly verifiable but, in truth, completely fabricated. Why take that risk? Why lie about a hospital if the truth was simpler? Unless, of course, the truth was too scandalous to reveal. And this brings us to the heart of the mystery. Portland Hospital's role was never about healthcare, it was about theater. It was a stage set, a name inserted into the script to give the illusion of normalcy. But behind the curtain, the reality was far stranger. And now, with the doctor's confession, the curtain has finally been pulled back. But this is just the surface. Because once you accept that Meghan was never at Portland, another question emerges. Who created this illusion, and why? Was it Meghan herself, determined to control the narrative? Was it Harry, complicit in maintaining the facade? Or was it the palace, orchestrating the deception to protect the monarchy's image at any cost? The truth, as always, lies in the motives. And as we peel back the layers, we discover that the doctor's confession was only the beginning. Because what they admitted next shook the entire foundation of the story. After 6 years of silence, a voice finally broke through the carefully constructed wall of secrecy. A voice the palace never wanted the world to hear. A voice from inside Portland Hospital itself. Imagine the gravity of that moment, the sheer audacity of it. A doctor, bound by oaths of discretion, suddenly saying the words no one ever expected. Meghan Markle was never officially admitted to the hospital. The supposed royal patient never existed in their records. Stop and think about that. 6 years of speculation. 6 years of whispers dismissed as conspiracy theories. 6 years of palace statements taken as gospel. And then, just like that, a single admission shatters the illusion. Isn't it extraordinary how one sentence can unravel years of carefully polished storytelling? But let's rewind to the moment of the confession. It didn't come in a screaming tabloid headline. It wasn't delivered from the steps of Buckingham Palace. No, it came quietly, almost casually, as if the truth had been waiting, festering, ready to burst free when the time was right. A question was asked, perhaps too directly to deflect, and the doctor responded. Not with denial, not with palace-approved talking points, but with blunt honesty. Meghan Markle was never officially their patient. Now, why would a doctor risk such a statement? Think about it. Hospitals pride themselves on discretion. Staff rarely, if ever, comment on high-profile cases. Confidentiality is sacred. Breaking that silence is unthinkable, unless the truth itself demands it. Unless the deception had grown so vast, so grotesque, that silence became complicity. Perhaps, after years of holding it in, this doctor could no longer bear the weight of the lie. Or perhaps, and this is even more chilling, they knew the truth was already seeping out and decided to step ahead of the flood. And what a truth it is. If Meghan never set foot in Portland Hospital as a patient, then the entire narrative collapses. No labor ward, no royal suite, no attending staff bustling around her. The photographs, the statements, the timelines, they all become props in a stage performance. And suddenly, everything the public thought they knew about Archie's birth is drenched in suspicion. Think of how many people were involved in crafting the original story. Press officers, aides, photographers, even Harry himself. All repeating, reinforcing, performing a narrative that never truly happened. And yet, one insider, one doctor, chose to deviate from the script. Do you see the irony? A global stage, billions convinced, and the unraveling begins not with a grand investigation, but with a whisper of truth. Now here's where it gets even more damning. The doctor didn't hesitate. They didn't waffle. Their statement was clear. Meghan was never officially admitted. That word, officially, is key. It suggests there was no paperwork, no legal record, no medical file tying her to the hospital. And without those, her supposed presence there becomes nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Official records are the backbone of legitimacy. Remove them, and you're left with rumor. And rumor is precisely what the palace wanted to suppress. But now, rumor has become testimony. And testimony changes everything. Imagine how that revelation must have landed in the corridors of Buckingham Palace. For years, they brushed off questions, mocked those who doubted, insisted on their version of events. And then, in one moment, the very institution they leaned on for credibility, the hospital itself, was turned against them. How do you recover from that? How do you maintain the illusion when the supposed witnesses start confessing the truth? And think of the weight on Harry and Meghan themselves. For years, they've painted themselves as victims of a cruel media machine. They've accused the press of fabrications, distortions, and lies. Yet here, in this confession, lies the ultimate contradiction. The greatest fabrication may not have been from the press, but from Harry and Meghan themselves. Doesn't that sting with irony? The doctor's confession also raises another critical question. Who else knows? If one insider spoke out, are there others? Nurses, administrators, clerks who saw no trace of Meghan's name on admission logs? Staff who heard whispers in corridors about a royal birth that wasn't? Secrets rarely stay confined. One voice often leads to another. And the moment one truth slips free, others soon follow. But here's the most unsettling part. This wasn't just about one birth. This wasn't just about Meghan. This confession strikes at the heart of the monarchy's credibility. Royal births are not ordinary. They secure the line of succession. They shape history. They bind the monarchy to its people. And if this one was staged, if this one was built on illusion, then the very fabric of continuity is stained. Because if Archie's birth story was false, what does that mean for his place in the line of succession? Could deception unravel not just trust, but legitimacy itself? The confession also reframes Harry's role. If he was complicit, then he lied knowingly, smiling to cameras while protecting a secret. If he wasn't, then he too was a victim of deception, manipulated into playing his part in the performance. Which is worse, the loyal prince who deceives his nation, or the gullible husband who doesn't realize he's part of the show? Either way, the confession casts him in a deeply troubling light. And what about Meghan? For someone who has consistently spoken about her desire for authenticity, about her struggles with the falsehoods of the press, this revelation paints a different picture. Was the birth story her ultimate act of control, her masterpiece of narrative manipulation? Or was it a desperate attempt to shield her family from scrutiny, gone too far? The doctor's words force us to confront these questions, even if the answers make us uncomfortable. But let's not overlook the broader stage. This isn't just a domestic scandal. This confession reverberates globally. In the United States, where Meghan and Harry now live, their entire brand rests on authenticity. In the Commonwealth, where royal legitimacy still holds weight, such a revelation strikes at the heart of loyalty. Around the world, people who once celebrated Archie's birth now revisit that joy with suspicion. The doctor's words echo far beyond Portland Hospital. They echo through history. And that, perhaps, is why the confession matters so much. Because it doesn't just expose one lie. It invites us to question everything. If the palace could stage a birth, what else have they staged? What other narratives have been polished, manipulated, rewritten? The monarchy has always walked a fine line between truth and theater. But this crosses into dangerous territory. Yet, as shocking as the confession was, it wasn't the end of the story. Because the doctor, emboldened by truth, didn't stop there. They went further. They revealed details that not only confirmed Meghan wasn't admitted, but hinted at a cover-up far more elaborate than anyone dared to imagine. And what came next would shake the illusion of the royal fairy tale to its core. If Meghan Markle was never officially admitted to Portland Hospital, then the question becomes unavoidable. What really happened? Where was Archie Harrison actually born? Or was he born there at all? The palace's official narrative now hangs by a thread, and the doctor's confession forces us to consider theories that once sounded too outrageous, too scandalous, too unthinkable. But when the illusion of Portland falls apart, the stage is left bare. And suddenly, the whispers of a staged birth don't sound like whispers anymore. They sound like the only explanation left standing. Let's start with the most obvious alternative, a home birth. The palace could have easily explained that Meghan, seeking privacy and comfort, chose to deliver Archie at Frogmore Cottage. Many women today opt for home births, and it would not have shocked the world. If anything, it might have humanized her. But here's the catch. If it really was a home birth, why pretend it was at Portland? Why invent a hospital admission that never happened? The deception seems unnecessary, unless, of course, there was something about the truth they desperately needed to hide. Then comes the second, far more explosive theory, surrogacy. From the earliest days of Meghan's pregnancy, rumors circulated that something wasn't quite right. Her baby bump appeared to fluctuate in size dramatically, sometimes seeming to deflate, sometimes shifting in a way that didn't align with natural pregnancy. Videos even circulated online showing her belly folding strangely as she crouched. At the time, defenders called it conspiracy nonsense. Critics were dismissed as cruel or delusional. But with the doctor's confession, those old suspicions roar back to life. If Meghan was never a patient at Portland, then the possibility of surrogacy suddenly becomes harder to dismiss. Think about it. Surrogacy is legal in the UK, but it carries complexities, especially for the royal family. The monarchy thrives on tradition, bloodlines, and appearances. A surrogate birth, while perfectly valid in modern society, would be viewed as scandalous by the palace establishment. It would challenge centuries of royal precedent. It would provoke questions about legitimacy, about succession, about the very continuity of the crown. If Meghan and Harry had used a surrogate, admitting it openly would have unleashed a constitutional and cultural storm. And so, the theory goes, a cover-up was arranged. Portland Hospital became the perfect decoy. But here's where things get even darker. A staged hospital birth doesn't just suggest deception, it suggests deliberate theater. The photographs of Meghan cradling Archie days later take on new meaning. The immaculate white dress, the pristine appearance, the oddly calm demeanor for a woman supposedly 2 days postpartum. It all looks less like reality and more like performance. As if the palace and Meghan together were playing roles on a stage, acting out the story of a birth that hadn't unfolded as described. Ask yourself, why else would they break with tradition so sharply? Why avoid the hospital steps, the public photos, the joyful spectacle that Diana and Kate both embraced? Tradition dictates visibility. The staged birth, however, demanded secrecy. It demanded the avoidance of witnesses. And witnesses are the one thing a staged story can never survive. But there's another layer here. Timing. The palace initially claimed Meghan was in labor. Hours later, Harry appeared before cameras, beaming, announcing the baby had already been born. The timeline didn't add up. Journalists scrambled to correct their reports. Contradictions piled up, and the story seemed oddly rushed. Was this confusion accidental, or was it the palace fumbling to keep a staged narrative together? Think about it. If a baby had been born elsewhere, at another time, the press office would have been tasked with retrofitting the facts. And in that process, cracks inevitably began to show. And yet, through all the contradictions, Harry's role was perhaps the strangest of all. Standing before the press, he seemed nervous, almost rehearsed. He praised the incredible hospital staff, thanked them for their work, and gushed about how amazing women are for enduring childbirth. But if Meghan was never admitted to Portland, then who exactly was he thanking? Why heap praise on staff who weren't even involved? Was this his attempt to keep the illusion alive, to sell the story with convincing detail? Or was he himself misled, repeating lines fed to him by palace aides? The idea of a staged birth isn't just about scandal, it's about control. Meghan and Harry, by 2019, were already at war with the media. They accused the press of intrusion, of cruelty, of fabrication. By staging the birth, they seized control of the narrative, shutting out photographers, reporters, and prying eyes. They decided who saw what, when, and how. But in trying to control the story so tightly, they may have created a deception too fragile to last. Because lies, even well-crafted ones, eventually collapse under their own weight. And collapse they did, the moment the doctor confessed. Now, picture the implications of this stage performance. The palace knowingly presented false information to the public. Millions of people celebrated a birth story that wasn't real. Newspapers printed details that were fabricated. History books may already contain falsehoods. And all of it to protect what? Privacy? Image? Or something far more explosive? There's a cruel irony in all of this. Meghan and Harry often speak about their truth. They claim the media distorts, manipulates, and lies. And yet, in this case, it seems it was their own truth, the carefully staged one, that deceived millions. Isn't it the ultimate contradiction? To accuse others of lies while living within one of the biggest fabrications in modern royal history? Of course, defenders will argue, maybe Meghan did give birth, but the palace simply handled the optics poorly. Maybe Portland's records were kept off the books for privacy. Maybe Harry's nervousness was genuine joy, not deception. But here's the problem. Those defenses collapse under scrutiny. Hospitals cannot erase records. They cannot pretend a patient was never admitted. Doctors don't risk their careers by fabricating confessions. The simplest explanation, the one Occam's razor slices cleanly toward, is that the Portland birth never happened. And once you accept that, the staged birth theory stops being a conspiracy and starts being the only plausible truth. So what's left? We are left with two competing realities: the polished fairy tale the world was told, and the messy, scandalous truth leaking through the cracks. And with the doctor's confession, those cracks have turned into chasms. The palace may still cling to the story, but the illusion is shattered. Because if Meghan never gave birth at Portland, if Archie's arrival was staged, then everything changes. The photographs, the announcements, the very image of a new royal family, they all become props in a performance. And the audience, the people, the millions who believed, were unwitting participants in a carefully crafted play. But here's the real cliffhanger. If Archie's birth was staged, what does that say about the future of the monarchy itself? If an event as sacred as a royal birth can be fabricated, what else has been hidden? What else has been rewritten to suit the narrative of the crown? And the answer to that question will shake not just Meghan and Harry, but the entire foundation of the royal family. Was Prince Harry complicit in the staged story of his son's birth? Or was he himself a victim of Meghan's carefully crafted performance? This is one of the most haunting questions at the heart of the scandal. Because make no mistake, Harry's behavior during and after Archie's supposed arrival raises more questions than it answers. He was there. He was the one who appeared before cameras. He was the one who spoke about the miracle of childbirth. And yet, If Meghan was never admitted to Portland Hospital, then Harry's words weren't just vague, they were false. The question is, was he lying knowingly or unknowingly? Let's rewind to Harry's first public appearance after Archie's birth. Standing in front of the cameras, he was visibly emotional, eyes darting, voice quivering, smile a little too wide. He described the birth as amazing, said he was incredibly proud of Meghan, and praised the hospital staff for their support. But remember, if Meghan wasn't a patient, then what hospital staff was he praising? Was this part of a rehearsed script, carefully memorized lines intended to sell a story that never happened? Or was Harry simply repeating what he'd been told, unaware of how much was being hidden from him? Here's where it gets even stranger. Harry contradicted official palace statements almost immediately. The palace claimed Meghan went into labor in the early morning hours. Yet Harry said Archie had already been born by the time reporters received the news. That slip may have been a simple mistake, or it may have been the first sign that the narrative was being stitched together clumsily in real time. And Harry, in his nervousness, let the thread show. But if Harry was complicit, it's worth asking, why would he go along with such a deception? The answer may lie in his loyalty. Harry has always been fiercely protective of Meghan. From the moment their relationship became public, he waged war against the press, against critics, against anyone who dared to question her. If Meghan insisted on secrecy, if she insisted on controlling the narrative, would Harry have challenged her? Or would he have thrown himself fully into the act, determined to shield her from the storm? Even if it meant deceiving the world? This brings us to an uncomfortable irony. Harry, who often speaks about authenticity, about being real, may have participated in one of the most inauthentic royal acts in modern history. He's accused the monarchy of staging appearances, of suppressing truth. Yet here, he may have done the very same thing. Isn't that the contradiction at the center of his story? The prince who fled the palace to escape lies, caught in a lie of his own making? Still, some argue that Harry was not complicit at all, that he too was deceived, that Meghan, drawing on her Hollywood instincts, controlled the birth narrative so tightly that even Harry was left in the dark. Think of it, a husband overwhelmed with excitement, eager to trust his wife, repeating what he was told without questioning the details. If that's true, then Harry becomes less an accomplice and more a pawn, a man swept up in a story bigger than himself. But does that absolve him? Or does it make him look weak, gullible, unfit for the sharp realities of royal duty? Let's not forget Harry's own words in later interviews. He often spoke of our truth. He leaned heavily on emotion, on feelings, rather than facts. When pressed on details, he grew vague, evasive. In one sit-down, he even said, "It was just the most amazing experience, something I'll never forget." And yet, he offered no concrete details, no timeline, no specifics. Compare that to William describing George's arrival, or Kate speaking candidly about her labors. Harry's accounts feel strangely hollow, as if reciting from memory not an experience, but a story he was told to believe. And then there's the photo call. Harry stood beside Meghan as she presented Archie to the world in Windsor Castle. His smile seemed genuine, his pride palpable. But look closely. He appeared nervous, shifting, unsure of where to stand, how to pose. He held Archie awkwardly, almost stiffly. Was it the nerves of a new father? Or the unease of a man performing in a play he didn't fully believe in? The public noticed. Even royal watchers who usually defended Harry began to raise eyebrows. His behavior didn't match the joy of a man whose wife had just delivered their child. It matched the discomfort of someone grappling with a secret. And the more you look back, the more that discomfort seems to seep through. So which version of Harry is true? The loyal husband protecting Meghan by participating in deception, or the manipulated prince unknowingly complicit in her stage performance? Either answer is damning. If complicit, he lied to his people, betrayed their trust, and tarnished the monarchy. If manipulated, he appears weak, naive, and unable to see the truth in front of him. Neither role flatters him. Both leave scars. And here's the deeper tragedy. Harry, once one of the most beloved royals, the cheeky prince who charmed the world, now stands as a figure shrouded in suspicion. Every smile, every statement, every gesture from that period is reinterpreted through the lens of deception. Was he lying? Was he struggling? Was he trapped? We may never know for certain. But the doctor's confession casts a long shadow over Harry's role. And yet, this is only one side of the coin. Because while Harry's part in the staged birth is troubling, Meghan's is even more so. She was the central figure, the star of the performance, the woman whose Hollywood instincts may have turned a royal birth into a global illusion. And what happens when a Hollywood actress marries a prince, and suddenly life itself becomes a script? That's where our story takes its next shocking turn. What happens when a Hollywood actress marries into the world's most famous monarchy? Does she become a royal, bound by centuries of tradition? Or does she turn the institution itself into a stage? Meghan Markle's entry into the House of Windsor was unlike anything the British public had ever seen. She wasn't a quiet aristocrat, raised to curtsy and keep her thoughts to herself. She was a woman who spent years in front of cameras, mastering the art of performance, learning how to play characters so convincingly that audiences forgot where the fiction ended and reality began. And when the moment came for the biggest role of her life, the birth of Archie Harrison, many now believe she slipped seamlessly into that familiar mode. Actress first, royal second. Let's start with the basics. Meghan was a professional storyteller. On Suits, she delivered lines with precision, hit her marks with grace, and cultivated a reputation for poise. Off-screen, she curated her lifestyle blog, The Tig, with the same level of polish. Every detail mattered. Every image was designed to project a certain version of Meghan, glamorous, authentic, aspirational. When she married Prince Harry, she didn't leave those instincts behind. She brought them into the monarchy, where she found herself not just part of a family, but part of a centuries-old brand. And in Meghan's world, a brand was something to be managed, scripted, and packaged. Now imagine her in 2019. The pressure was immense. The world was scrutinizing her every move, criticizing her clothes, her speeches, even her body language. She was painted as a villain by tabloids, a diva by palace aides, a disruptor by royal traditionalists. Against that backdrop, the birth of Archie was more than just a personal event. It was her chance to control the story, to show the world Meghan Markle on her terms. And how better to do that than by turning the royal birth into a performance scripted so tightly no one could break through? This is where the Hollywood instinct reveals itself most clearly. Look at the photos from Windsor Castle, 2 days after Archie's supposed birth. Meghan appears in a perfectly tailored white dress, glowing, her hair styled, her makeup flawless. She looks less like a woman who has just endured labor and more like an actress stepping onto a red carpet. Compare that to Diana, pale and exhausted outside St. Mary's. Compare it to Kate, clutching newborns with visible fatigue. Meghan's image was the opposite, serene, controlled, immaculate. It was not authenticity, it was theater. And let's talk about that white dress. White has always been symbolic. Purity, rebirth, perfection. Meghan chose it deliberately, knowing what it would signal to cameras. And the baby, wrapped snugly, face barely visible, added to the sense of mystery. This wasn't just a mother showing her child. It was a tableau, a scene carefully directed for maximum effect. Every angle, every shot felt staged. Doesn't that sound more like Hollywood than monarchy? But here's the chilling part. Meghan didn't just perform for the cameras. She performed for Harry, for the palace, for the public at large. The inconsistencies in her pregnancy bump, the shifting timelines, the lack of hospital evidence. All of it could be explained away if the performance was convincing enough. That's what actors do. They sell you the story, they suspend your disbelief, they make you believe in something unreal. And for a time, the world bought it. Some might argue that Meghan's Hollywood background was a strength, that it allowed her to handle the crushing spotlight better than most. But in this case, it may have blurred the lines between reality and fiction too much. Did Meghan ever truly separate her real life from her scripted one? Or was the staging of Archie's birth simply the ultimate example of her merging the two, creating a narrative so polished it hid the messy truth beneath? Think about how she framed her experiences in interviews. She often spoke in sound bites, in polished lines that felt rehearsed. Even in moments that were supposed to be raw, there was a sense of control. The Oprah interview, for example, was not a casual chat. It was a production. The lighting, the setting, the cadence of her answers. It all carried the same precision as a Hollywood set. Why would her approach to Archie's birth be any different? And yet, As any performer knows, the danger of a performance is exposure. Once the illusion breaks, the audience turns. With the doctor's confession that Meghan was never admitted to Portland Hospital, the performance crumbles. Suddenly, the white dress looks less angelic and more manipulative. The polished hair looks less impressive and more suspicious. The entire image transforms from inspiring to deceptive. And Meghan's greatest strength, her ability to control the narrative, becomes her greatest weakness. Let's not forget the emotional undertones. Meghan had long felt vilified by the press. She accused them of fabricating lies, of painting her unfairly. If that was her perception, then staging the birth may have felt like poetic justice. If they're going to write stories anyway, I'll give them the story I want them to write. But the irony is devastating. In trying to escape lies, she may have created the biggest lie of all. Isn't that the cruelest contradiction of her entire journey? Harry's role in this becomes clearer in light of Meghan's instincts. He was the prince desperate to protect his wife, but she was the actress trained to perform. Together, they created a dynamic where Harry supplied the devotion and Meghan supplied the script. He played the part of the glowing new father, she the radiant mother, and the world applauded. But behind the curtain, it was all a stage. And the audience, the global public, was never supposed to see the strings being pulled. But here's the twist. Performances, no matter how flawless, always end. The curtain falls, the lights go out, and the truth waits in the shadows. For Meghan, the truth is now clawing its way to the surface. The doctor's confession wasn't just a revelation, it was the end of Act 1. And the real drama begins now. Because while Meghan may have been the star of the staged birth, there was another actor on the stage who played an equally critical role, the monarchy itself. The palace, with all its silence, all its complicity, stood by and allowed the show to go on. And the question is, why? Why didn't the monarchy stop this charade? That's the question echoing through every corner of this scandal. After all, the royal family has weathered storms before. They've managed crises, silenced rumors, and corrected narratives. They know, perhaps better than anyone, that when a lie festers, it can consume the very foundation of the crown. So why, when faced with the inconsistencies surrounding Archie's birth, did Buckingham Palace remain silent? Why didn't they intervene, clarify, or insist on transparency? Let's begin with precedent. The monarchy thrives on ritual and tradition. Births, marriages, funerals, these aren't just private milestones, they are national events. When Diana gave birth to William and Harry, the world saw every detail. The hospital steps, the tired smile, the proof that history was unfolding in real time. When Kate Middleton delivered George, Charlotte, and Louis, the story was the same. The monarchy understood the importance of those moments, not just for the family, but for the nation. The visibility of those births reassured the public that the line of succession was secure, that continuity was intact. So why, when it came to Meghan, did the palace break with tradition? Why no photos outside Portland Hospital? Why no press pack assembled, as had always been the case? The official excuse was privacy, that Meghan and Harry wanted a more intimate, personal moment. But privacy does not mean deception. Privacy would have been keeping the cameras at a distance, limiting the photo call, refusing tabloid access. Deception, however, is something different, creating a false narrative, naming a hospital where no admission occurred, and staging photographs after the fact. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The monarchy's silence wasn't just passivity. It was complicity. By refusing to clarify, by allowing the Portland narrative to stand unchallenged, they became part of the performance. Whether out of fear, calculation, or desperation, Buckingham Palace chose to protect the illusion rather than expose the truth. And in doing so, they became co-authors of the staged birth story. But why? The answer lies in the monarchy's most sacred currency, image. The crown survives not because it rules, but because it symbolizes. Its power rests on perception, on the idea that it is timeless, trustworthy, and above scandal. When Meghan joined the family, she was hailed as a modernizing force, the face of a more inclusive monarchy. Her child, half American, biracial, and royal, represented the future. That image was too valuable to jeopardize. A scandal about surrogacy or secrecy would have shattered the carefully crafted vision. And so, silence became the strategy. Think about the timing. In 2019, The monarchy was already under strain. Prince Andrew's scandal loomed. The cracks between William and Harry were widening. The Queen's health was a growing concern. Could the institution afford another scandal? This time about the legitimacy of a royal birth? The palace may have calculated that silence, however risky, was safer than the truth. Better to allow a staged story to stand than to ignite a constitutional crisis. And yet, silence is not neutral. Silence speaks. By saying nothing, the monarchy effectively endorsed the deception. They let the world believe Meghan was admitted to Portland. They allowed Harry's vague statements to go uncorrected. They let the photographs circulate without context. In doing so, they traded truth for convenience. And once the truth began to leak, their silence transformed from strategy into betrayal. This betrayal wasn't just toward the press or the public, it was toward their own history. The monarchy is built on trust, on the belief that the crown represents continuity. If the palace was willing to bend the truth about a royal birth, what else might they bend? Illnesses? Affairs? Successions? Once that door is opened, it can never fully close again. And the monarchy, already fragile in the modern world, risks crumbling under the weight of its own illusions. But perhaps the most damning question is this: who within the palace knew? Was it just press officers, instructed to stick to the Portland script? Or did senior royals, Charles, William, even the Queen herself, approve the silence? Imagine the discussions behind closed doors. Should we correct the story? Should we admit the truth? Or should we let it stand and hope no one digs deeper? If the monarchy's highest members knowingly allowed the deception, then this isn't just Meghan's scandal. It's theirs too. And doesn't that change everything? Up until now, Meghan and Harry have been framed as outsiders, rebels against the institution. But if the palace stood by while they staged Archie's birth, then the monarchy itself is implicated. The crown becomes not the victim of Meghan's Hollywood instincts, but the enabler. The silence wasn't protection for Meghan. It was protection for the monarchy's own image. Of course, defenders will argue that the palace had no choice, that Meghan and Harry were determined to control their narrative, and the monarchy couldn't stop them without causing a rift. But history tells us otherwise. The palace has always had control. From silencing scandals to reshaping public perception, it has proven ruthless when necessary. If they wanted to stop the staged birth, they could have. The fact that they didn't reveals a chilling truth. They saw the deception as preferable to exposure. And now, that choice has backfired. The doctor's confession has blown open the silence, exposing the palace's complicity. Their strategy of doing nothing has resulted in everything collapsing. Instead of protecting the crown, their silence has endangered it. Instead of avoiding scandal, they've magnified it. And instead of securing trust, they've lost it. But here's the cliffhanger. If the monarchy was willing to stay silent about a royal birth, what else have they stayed silent about? What other scandals have been smoothed over, rewritten, or buried beneath silence? The staged birth may not be an isolated deception, but part of a long pattern of concealment. And the next chapter of this story reveals just how far that silence extended, because it wasn't just the palace that played along. It was the press, too. The very institutions tasked with holding power to account became complicit in protecting the lie. How did the world's press, the so-called watchdogs of truth, miss what could be the biggest royal deception of the modern age? How did seasoned journalists, who pounced on every detail of Diana's life and dissected every step of Kate Middleton's pregnancies, simply accept the palace's word that Meghan delivered at Portland Hospital? The answer is both simple and shocking. The media wasn't just fooled. In many ways, it was complicit. Let's begin with the obvious. The British press has always had a unique relationship with the monarchy, half watchdog, half lapdog. They poke, they prod, they criticize, but when it comes to major royal milestones, they tend to play along. After all, the monarchy sells newspapers. A glossy front page of a royal baby will outsell 100 stories about political scandals. The press, like the palace, understands the value of the fairy tale. And when the palace handed them the Portland narrative, they printed it with barely a murmur of doubt. But think about the inconsistencies. Experienced reporters noticed them. Some whispered in newsrooms about the lack of hospital photos, the strange timeline, Harry's shaky statements. Yet none dared to pursue the truth. Why? Because the risks were too high. To question a royal birth is to risk being blacklisted by palace officials, to lose access, to be branded a conspiracy theorist. Editors knew the stakes. And so, the safest option was to print the fairy tale and move on. And it wasn't just British media. Around the world, headlines celebrated Archie's birth. American outlets gushed over Meghan's strength and grace. Australian networks replayed Harry's words without scrutiny. Global magazines competed for glossy covers of the new family. The illusion became self-sustaining. Once the narrative was printed enough times, it solidified into truth. Isn't that how propaganda works? Repeat a story often enough, and people stop questioning it.